Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Preserves. On today's video we're going to be doing another pedal build, and hopefully the third time is a charm. I figured out what I did wrong on the last two pedals that I did, one of which I did not film, the other one I did, and I filmed it as a failure. On this one, it's so I was doing some research on this pedal, on this see if you can see that, this After Blaster. You can see on that side that it says After Blaster, maybe right there. And so when you combine this board with another board per se, like this one here, you have to omit some of the you have to omit some of the board that you populate. So like on this one, it has the clear resistor up on the top and a couple of other components that you omit from the other board, which we will omit this time, and we'll see if that does the thing. We're not going to do a 9-volt battery supply. We're just going to do the 9-volt power supply to it. I've got a few more of those things that's come in since then, so we can do the two boards build and then build them together. And so without any further ado, let's get to that. Let me get on my glasses here and we'll start building this board, and I'll bring you back when we are building the board. Okay, so I forgot to hit record on the first three that I populated here. So these are just the first three resistor values, and what we're going to do is just continue to populate those in line with this. So let me zoom you in a little bit so you can possibly see that. It's a little better. And so what I like to do when I'm building these is I have a little really thin pair of needle nose, and let's get the next value, which is R4, and that is a 4.7k ohm resistor. And then what I like to do with these resistors here, as you can see that, is I like to just bend them right at the edges of the resistor itself. So I'll show you how that's done. Just take it, bend it over on itself so it's even with the resistor, like that. See that? And then just bend them flush with the resistor. Then I kind of squish them together a little bit and straighten out the legs on them. And on resistors, it doesn't excuse me, it doesn't matter which way you set them, but me being the person that I am, I like to set all the gold strips together. So and then you just shove it in your board like so, and they fall right down, and then you just push it the rest of the way. And then I like to fold the legs over like so to make it easier to populate, like that. Yeah, so I'm gonna get all these resistor values and then the diodes on the next line populated, and then I'll bring you back for the soldering portion of it. Okay, so quick note, you can see that silver strip on your diode there, maybe. Yeah. That corresponds on your board with, on this top strip right here, you can see the lines on your diode, where the lines go for your diode. So you make sure that you're doing that properly, because otherwise your board's not going to function properly. Okay, so now all of our resistors and our diodes on this top line right here are populated. We're going to solder those up. And so what I like to do is get these in my helping hands here, just like so. You get a really small tip soldering iron for this. Make sure it's cleaned up. There we go. All right. All right, so we've got those, so we'll start on populating the next section of our board here. And we'll move all this out of the way, and then we'll zoom you out, and I'll be back. Okay, so next we've got our capacitors and film caps that we're going to do. Let me zoom you in on that. So it's this second box here, and this board is designed to do two different pedals. So you could do the MXR or the DOD. And so what I'm building the MXR, and then I'm giving it another gain stage here. So hopefully we can get it all worked out, but I got all my capacitors and film caps and whatnot laid out. We're going to start with this one that's right in the middle here, and that is a 10 picofarad. So what I like to do on these is I like to bend them out like so. Bend them out. And then bend them up so they fit in the slot. Right. Okay, so moving on, we're putting in our nanofarad capacitors. And So I just like to make them so when you put them in, they look like so. And then I populate all of those all the way across the board with my actual capacitors and move on from there. I'll bring you back when I got those populated. We'll solder them on. Okay, so now we've got all that populated, and we're going to go through and solder all these joints on here, get those all soldered up. And we also got I put a dip switch socket right here, and I had to solder a couple of the points so it'd stay on when I flipped it over. So it's kind of soldered, but not really. So let's go through, get all this soldered up here. So you can see that we like to go through, make sure none of these wiggle, and they're nice and firm connections, and they feel like they are. That dip socket is good. And so after you get your board all populated like that, the rest of this, the D4 here, the S, whatever those are, what is it? They are S4, 5, and 6. Those don't get populated because we're going to populate those on this after blaster. So that's all populated. We're going to get our wires run into here and our pots on there. And so our pots get populated on this side of the board because it sits up like that. So let's get our pots up in there. Alright, so it's been about a week since I was working on this MXR board here with I've got the potentiometers, and this board pretty much populated with the exception of the ground and positive that go to our after blaster board here. And the reason being is because I didn't have knobs all the way for what I wanted to do to make, to make the pedal look really nice. And so what I did is I went on to Tada, I don't know if you can see that, Tada Electronics, and I ordered me up a couple of things. More of these silver ones, so I may go with these ones now, or these kind of brownish red ones, and I'll show you why here in a second. I think they may look really good on here, but these do fit quite well on these ones, and they'll fit on both styles of potentiometer. So they'll fit on these style, and they've got a little screw to tighten them down. So I may go with these ones. We're gonna see right now which ones we're gonna go with. So let me get this out of the way, and then I'll show you the reason why I ordered the two different kinds. So I've got two different kinds of pedal boxes instead of this plain one here, which is, it's the same size, but I got, let me cut this open for you, and I'll show you. So I've got this, it's kind of like a sparkle brown, candy brown color, and I was thinking that these knobs right here, which it's looking like they will, oh yeah, that'll stand out real nice. See that? That color against that, that'll stand out real nice. So I think that's what we're gonna go with, is these together. And that's what I was thinking, is they would stand out really nice, and these potentiometer knobs will pair really nice with this color. And so I didn't want to, I'm being lazy. I could have painted them, but I was kind of just wanting to do the build and get it done, if it works. We'll just put it that way. And then I got some just straight white ones. Let me cut that open for you so you can see what those look like, what this one looks like. I got two of each just in case, and because I have a bunch of, yeah, so that's just a nice flat white color. And I think, you know, these gray ones will look good on there, or excuse me, silver, or these black ones will look good on there, of either kind. So I decided to, you know, get some that would look really nice together. So let me put that away and that away, and we'll put this one back away where it goes. And I did have some other smaller enclosures, but where I'm adding an extra circuit, oops, to my build here, I wanted to make sure that I had enough room to do so. So let's get that out of the way, and we'll continue the build here. So what we're gonna do next is I'm gonna add on this side of the board here, up at the top, I'm gonna add my two positive and two negative wires on here, and we don't have to populate this down here at all. These two portions of the circuit board, because they will be populated on this board here. So let's get set up, and we'll start to get our wires clipped for our positive and negative, and start building this second circuit. Okay, so what I like to do is I like to get all my lengths pre-done, and I strip the top ends of all my wires and make sure they're ready to go into the board before I do anything. And so now let's get you set up, pointed down at the soldering station, and we'll get to started here. Alright, so we got our first wire populated here, and we're just going to go ahead and heat up the pad. Like so. Make sure we get all that solder up in there. Just like so. Let me zoom you in for the next one. Make sure your wire's all the way down to the pad. Heat up the pad. Get your solder right in there. Just like so. Now you can see that's nice and firm. And move that out of the way. And then we'll get our grounds on there. You can see our grounds are right here. And we just populate the first one. Shove her in there. Heat the pad up. Lay our solder in. Just like so. Get our second wire up in here. And this is why it helps to have a really small tipped soldering iron, because you don't want to overdo it. Alright, so the next thing we need to do on this is populate our, let me zoom you out, our out right here and our in on this side. So let me get some wire for that and I'll bring you back. Alright, so we've got our in and out yellow wires populated on the board. Let's heat up our pad and get some solder on these. And then this board will be done, and then we will start populating our after blaster over here. And then all these connections can go to the respected areas they need to go to. So get this, let me get a good angle on that. I think we're in the clear now. We'll flip that over maybe and get some better solder up in there. That was a hard position to do that in. Alright, let's get this pad. There we go. Solid. Alright, let's check out the back. Make sure we're good. Alright, we got solder coming through on that side. Solder coming through on that side, so we're good. We're gonna go ahead and clip these excess wires off. That way they're not touching anything. And you can see our connection right here. Up in there underneath that little, right there, that's our connection. It's pretty blurry, but maybe you can get a look at it. There you go. So all of our connections are nice and solid. Let's move on to the next little bit. So let's move this aside, since that's populated. And we will get our after blaster on here, and we will switch our schematic. Something's going on with those. I don't like it. There we go. All we really need is our value list, because this tells you where our actual, if I can get that there for you, let me show you. Anyway, so right here, it gives you all of your, you know, what position they are. R1, R2, R3, R4, and then it tells you what all the other stuff is, and this tells you your values right here. So let's spin this back this way. And let's start populating our stuff. So our first, we need is a 33K ohm in R1. So we grab that, and we grab our little tiny pliers here, and what we do, like I've showed you before earlier in the video, you take your resistor, you come right to the end of it right here with the very tip and bend it over so it looks like so. And you do that to both sides, and then that makes it so it fits directly into your board. And then pop her in there, and it slides right down just like so. You see that? And then what I like to do is bend these ends over, and then I need one more for R4, so we'll leave those out. And now R2, I need a 1 meg, and we do the same thing with this one. Like I said, right to the edge of the resistor with the very tip of your very, very thin needle nose, and bend it directly down like so. Oh, that was a bad picture. Like so. And then we just bend it straight down, and then we do the other side. And then you should have something that looks like that afterwards. And then that just slides right into your board. In the slots, the 2 holes. Just like so. Then I bend it over so they sit nice and firm, so when you solder up the back end, they solder up really well. So I'm gonna populate the rest of this, because that's basically how you populate, and then I'll bring you back once we've got the board populated. Alright, I had to take a little break here because it's snowing pretty heavily outside, and my dog is pretty old and he will not go down the back deck stairs if there's anything slippery on it. So he needed to go out, and I've already shoveled that deck like twice today, and I already had a buildup of like 4 inches on there. And the first time that I shoveled it today, it was probably about 4 inches, and the second time it was only probably an inch. But we're getting quite a bit of snow out today, so lots of breaks in between the build here today. So what we got next, so what I've got, let me put this MXR board aside, and I'm gonna show you what we're doing here now. So this is a bias trim pot on there, and you put that on there so you can have the optimal sound, brightness, you know, all that goodness. And then on our paper here, so we're doing this instead of putting another like one of these knobs on the back here, one of these pots, we're going to populate and put a 100K volume pot on the outside of the enclosure, and a on switch for the mod that we're doing with this board, so we can adjust all of our parameters pretty much on the outside. The bias is the only thing that we are not populating on the outside, because the mod doesn't call for that. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna populate our switch wires to the board before we populate anything else, like our foot switch, which is here, and our in and out jacks, which are there. We're going to strip back our wires and get them populated. And what I like to do is I like to put them in from the other side, because our after blaster, well, what we'll do is probably put these in on this side, because when we flip it over, they'll be opposite of these wires, so we know exactly where they go and which one's which. So because our foot switch itself gets populated on this side of the board, not this side. So let's go ahead and get our wires stripped out, and I'll bring you back when we're ready to solder them on. So we got our volume. Hold on, let me move you over. We got our volumes right here, and then we've got our switch wires on the opposite side. So that will be populating this and then our volume will be populating that. So now we need, so our ins and outs are on this board. On this board here with our grounds, and then our out and our in on this board, and our positives on this board. And so those come here, and then these ones come and go out to the jacks, the 1/4-inch jacks. So, and then we need to get our light. That's right here, and it's pre-wired up. And what we're gonna do with this is mount it into here. So, and then this will be populated at the top of our enclosure. So with that being said, let's get to the page of our diode, which is our LED. And here we go. And positive on the square and negative on that. And make sure that's the same on the other side. Yep, okay. So let's get our switch, or our LED light. There we go. Do that. Do that. Now on this one we really want to flood that hole up because these are thinner wires. So we're going to flood that hole up really good with solder. Just like so, and that way we can check the other side. Let's get this. Now we can check the other side and make sure that oh yeah. So you see how that's super flooded right there on those? We wanted to make sure of that. So now when we put this in, because the switch will be mounted up this way, and so when we put this in, we'll be able to have enough room for this LED to go all the way to the top of the enclosure. So now what we're going to do is we're going to run our in and out wires on this board as well, and those wires we're going to populate black and white, so that way we know what is what. So let me get some wires cut. Alright, so we've got our ins and outs populated here, and now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna come through and clip all of our tag ends off, make it all clean so it's not touching anything, and then we'll put the other board up top in the other helping hands, and we will start to populate those wires to this before we put the switch on, because I found that is easier. Let's get this board up here. hopefully we can hold on to it. Alright, just like so. To here. We'll just fold that up out of the way. Make sure it's nice and snug. And then when we put it in the enclosure, we'll make sure that it's nice and run so it looks nice. You know what I'm saying? Nice and run properly. But for the time being, we're just gonna get all this stuff soldered up, and then we can start populating our switches and stuff like that, and then we'll drill enclosure holes and all that guff. I like it when you can see the solder just float all the way around by itself. Pretty satisfying. Alright, so our switch is populated, our power and our ground is populated. We've got, which way did I twist this? Yeah, it was that way. So our switch is nice and flat. It's our in and our out. And now we can flow our in, which is this. This is a stereo jack, and this is a mono jack. That's what it calls for some reason. So let's get those populated up. I wonder if I have to... No, it's just ground. I think they're just all ground. There's no ground trace, so I think it's just all ground to the board. So let's get this one. We'll hold this one right here, and we'll hold this one right here, and then that way we can start populating our stuff. I think that's good. Yeah, okay. Wow, that was difficult. We're gonna stop it right there. Alright, so we're back. We got our switch populated, our 2 in and out jacks, and our volume pot populated onto this after blaster board. We've got our power and ground run to the board from this board, and then this board will be our power out to the DC jack here, which we have to run these through to solder it on and to screw it onto the inside of the actual enclosure. So our next step is to actually get our enclosure and take our screws out of there. And I like to leave the enclosure right there, and I want to make sure, so I've got this old drill template right here, and I want to make sure that they line up as well, and they do. And then I can put these where I want them, and then I can put the other, and I can just tape this to this with some painter's tape so it doesn't ruin the enclosure paint, and we will get that. Then I will put this one on for the foot switch. These are going to be a little bit higher, up like that. And then I will put the other volume and the switch down here. So the switch and the volume be here, and then our in and outs will be on either side of this. And so let me get that all drilled up, and then we'll see if she fits in the enclosure, and we'll go from there. Okay, little side note, guys. So when you are building a pedal, have found out that if you do not take, and because this is powder coated, if you do not take the powder coating off the inside of where these screws sit on the inside here, then you're not going to get a good ground to the whole thing. So when this sits on here, the screw will go through and ground inside of this, and that will make this circuit proper. If you don't get that, you're gonna have noise. So make sure that when you do that, you when you're building a pedal, make sure that you scrape off the inside of these screw holes. So when your screw sits in here and you screw it all the way down into your cavity here, it will ground out on that metal. So if you don't do that, you're gonna get noise. Make sure you do that. When drilling your enclosure, you want to make sure that you tape them off. So that way, I mean, you can see how clean my holes are there. That's because I measured everything, taped it out, laid my drill template on there, and drilled it out and then removed it. And that way you don't get no nicks or anything in your nice fresh power coated paint job there. So this is the last one I got to do right here, and I've measured and put a dot right there, and that one is going to be my out. And what I like to do is, because every one of these it's been weird, is every one of these has been a different size for some reason. My potentiometers were all three different sizes for some reason on the screw post, and so I've just grabbed extra ones and drilled the hole until it fit really snugly. And so that's what we're doing. I'm just in here. Let me move you this direction a little bit and zoom you in, lift you up a little bit, and I'll show you how we're doing that. So I just put my thumb down and put my step bit right in the middle of that dot, and then start out slow till it starts to grab the metal, and then you can apply pressure and speed up your drill. And I'm doing this over this schematic here, so that way I can just lift that. Alright, let me try that really quick. I don't think it's big enough yet, but I want to get some of that shavings off of there, so I'm not scraping up the enclosure. Alright, let's just test it really quick. It's almost there actually, so probably one more step and that'll do it. There it is. Alright, let's test fit it. A little bit more, not a whole lot. probably did it right there. Perfect. You hear how tight that is? And you put it in there, that's what you want. You don't want a lot of wobble. So that's where we're at. We can take the tape off, we can clean it up, we can test fit everything. I'll be right back. Alright, so we've got this pedal all put together here. One thing that I didn't do properly is I should have moved these holes down just a little bit and moved the LED down to about right here in between the switch and the volume for the after blaster portion of the circuit. And we've got our knobs on. This is the off position and up, and then down is on position. So then we've got our gain and our volume, and our volume after the volume. So just another gain stage pretty much after the original circuit. So anyway, let's get this plugged in, the back on, so we don't got any grounding issues. And that's what the circuit looks like on the inside there. I know it's a little messy, but let's make sure and put the back plate on and make sure that it's got a proper ground circuit all the way around. And the reason why I should have moved this back is because I can't get my as you can see, I can't get that all the way in to the enclosure, but I mean, it is what it is. For next time, I'll know when I make another one of these, because I do have a couple of more of these boards right here. So let me put it all back together. We'll get her hooked up on the amp, and I'll bring you back. All right, back here with this. Let's get her plugged in. We got signal coming through already. So, plug her into our SG. We got the straight SG sound. I'm a little out of tune, but let's turn her on. And you can see now I'm in the off position on this. Let me zoom you in a little bit. I'll bring you back just a tad. That way I can zoom you in a bit. All right. So we're in the off position, yeah? I've got all my knobs turned down. Let's flip her on. No sound. We got some gain with the volume all the way down. Turn the volume up. Now let's turn up the after blaster. So it says in the thing to have this set at least at 2 o'clock. So we're 12, 1, 2. Let's give her a little bit more volume. Let me sit down here and grab a pick really quick so you can see what we're doing here. Actually, I think this is the volume and this is the gain. Because, yeah. So this is the volume. And then this is the gain. Most definitely. And as you can tell, no noise. No noise. So, that is it. I don't know what to name this pedal yet, guys. But, with that being said, we could turn that off. And it, no sound. Turn it back on. And, so, and then you turn the pedal off. So, I don't know if this and this, that they've got to both be on for the pedal to work. So I don't know if this mod is worth a dick, in my opinion. I do like the volume on the outside, and I can adjust the bias on the inside as well by just popping the back cover off and adjusting it a little bit more. So, but yeah, there you go, guys. My first pedal that works. So yeah, there you go. I appreciate you guys watching the video. If you like this kind of type of content, leave a comment in the comment section about what you thought about this. And yeah, peace.